All right, it is the top of the hour, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Erin Owens, and I'll be the moderator for this session titled Claiming Status, Claiming Space, How Librarians Can Influence Campus AI Strategy. Before we begin, we have a few housekeeping reminders. We do have a code of conduct that we will adhere to for this conference. The link is posted in chat now. If you experience any issues related to conduct, we ask that you please do contact us at the Gale Conference Support email address that is also in the chat. Please be sure your microphone remains muted. During the Q&A, you may be unmuted if you raise your hand to ask a question or make a comment, but otherwise remain muted unless invited. You may use the chat box and the Q&A box to enter your questions, which we will, for the most part, address at the end of the talk. Please be aware this session is being live streamed and recorded, and the recording will be shared. If needed, you can enable captions by clicking on the Show Captions button at the bottom of your screen. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Mandi Goodsett, the Performing Arts and Humanities Librarian, as well as the Open Educational Resource and Copyright Advisor at Cleveland State University. Her research interests include media literacy, sustainability in libraries, and open education. Please join me in welcoming Mandi.
Thank you, Erin, and hello, everybody. I'm so excited to see you all here. There are a lot of you here, so I'm going to do my best to watch the chat, but I'm sure Erin will help me. If anyone has any questions as we go along, feel free to stop me. I'm happy to answer along the way. So again, my name is Mandi. I'm a librarian at Cleveland State University, and today we're going to be talking about how librarians can influence campus AI strategy. And I do have opinions about generative AI in libraries, but in this session, we're not assuming that generative AI is inevitable and that librarians should be promoting its use. And it also doesn't judge you if you're interested in generative AI and AI literacy and it's something that you would like to promote. Really, the goal of the session is to explore how librarians can influence what happens on their campuses, or even, outside of a higher education context, what's happening in your community. And ultimately, I'm hoping this is useful for you in all kinds of different contexts, where you have expertise that you would like to share and are looking for a way to have more influence. So I would love to see, I think you all have access to the chat because you've been introducing yourselves. I have some ideas, but I'd love to hear from you. Why do you think librarians should have a seat at the table when it comes to discussions about generative AI? What value do we bring to those conversations? Okay. We've been communicating, teaching data and digital literacy. Next natural step. Yep. We like getting things right. Suspicion. We have a skeptic mindset, maybe. Maybe AI literacy is a subset of information literacy. Librarian work is at the intersection of humans and information, and so we should be at the heart of these AI conversations. We're memory and knowledge workers, provenance record keeping. We are good at that. We have expertise regarding ethical use of information. This is going to be relevant in this session. Quality is important. Absolutely. We understand how to find and evaluate information. Expertise hooking up scholarship and sources. Yes. Feel free to keep adding your ideas. These are all great ideas. I pulled out the American Library Association's core values of librarianship, and these are the core values. And I think probably immediately you can see how they all relate to generative AI. So access, getting access to these tools. Some people have it, some people don't, and that leads to equity in terms of who can pay for access to more expensive generative AI tools. Privacy is a huge deal when it comes to generative AI. What we put into these tools can be used to then train future models. There's an issue of public good. Do generative AI tools actually improve the situation for human beings or not. And then there's environmental sustainability. So I think perhaps generative AI tools, more than any other information tools we've ever encountered, have an impact on the environment. And so are something that it's something that definitely falls within our purview. And some of these things you've also mentioned in the chat as well. We're used to teaching information literacy to patrons, and as you've noted, that includes critical evaluation skills. So we've got techniques, strategies, expertise that have to do with evaluating information, including generative AI outputs. We're also used to adapting to new information technologies. We're also used to negotiating contracts with vendors, and I think our campuses are beginning to um, have experiences where they're deciding whether or not to have contracts with big generative AI tools and maybe don't have the experience that we have in libraries in actually making sure that it serves our interests as much as possible. Um, and then we're really good at building community, facilitating productive campus and community discussion. I think often we think of libraries as at the heart of our campus. And so that is a natural place to have a discussion about a tool that affects everyone. Um, Historically, academic and other libraries are not always remembered in important discussions on campus. We don't always have a lot of influence. One reason for that is that we are not like a department or a program that generates money. We're kind of a money sink. We obviously do have value and we're really important on my campus. In my library, we like to say nobody graduates from the library, but nobody graduates without the library. So we have, of course, important value on our campus, but it's not always obvious what that value is. We have to spend a lot of time and energy reminding people about us and reminding us others that we are important. And so that's always a high priority for us. Okay, so I'm going to dive a little bit now into the research of workplace influence. And a lot of this is coming from the book Likeable Badass by Dr. Allison Fragel. Um, and she is an associate professor in the business school at University of North Carolina, and she's a researcher. And I found this book really helpful and interesting, partly because as I was reading it, I was recognizing things that are true to my own life and to actual experiences I have. So that might happen to you as well as I explain some of these things. But she really sticks to what is evidence based and what the research shows. So before I get into any of this, I want to give some disclaimers, and she gives similar ones. This is what the research shows in terms of influence in the workplace. That doesn't mean that it's fair. Um, and that we shouldn't continue to fight to change it. You might find like, wow, that's really too bad that certain groups of people have to do things more or differently. And we should definitely continue to fight to change that situation. But that is what the research is showing. A lot of the research that she presents and that I'm going to share with you focuses on women, but women, men, that's a binary that fails to capture the full spectrum of gender identity. And she does actually talk about how a lot of her research applies to men as well, just less so. So I'm hoping that there is content in here for everyone and you'll be able to see where you fit into this research. And this is something I am still working on. I think when we talk about influence in the workplace, it can seem kind of yucky and manipulative, but I think there is a way to do it authentically and with the genuine emotion behind it and not just to manipulate other people. And we have to think about our ultimate goal is to promote library values, and that is a worthwhile goal. But it's totally understandable if you feel a little bit weird about it as we talk about it. So a lot of research about influence in the workplace talks about power, and power is certainly important. But what Dr. Fragel and others have pointed out is that status is actually what we should be focusing on. So, status is the prominence, respect, or esteem that an individual has in the minds of others. Or you could also think about it as the evaluation of where a given individual stands with regard to whatever the basis of respect or esteem may be in a particular group or society. So it's the respect people have for you in the workplace. And understanding it that way really helps us understand why certain groups are constantly trying to get more power and having trouble, it's because their kind of default status in our society is lower. And that's the case for women, for example, BIPOC employees, and it can also extend to an entire profession as well. For example, librarianship, where kind of the default is to see that person or that professional as lower status, which makes it more difficult for them to have the power to do what they want to do in the workplace. So what Dr. Fragel and others have talked about is this warmth competence balance, and this is where likable badass comes in. So there are kind of there are two spectrums that we can think about how people perceive us. One is how warm or cold we are. That's kind of our likability. And I added some words here to help illustrate what that it looks like in real life. So a cold person might be described as impolite, uncivil, uncooperative, disrespectful, ill-mannered, or ruthless, whereas someone who's considered warm might be called kind, courteous, agreeable, respectful, charitable, cooperative, and soft-hearted. And then there's another kind of axis that is assertive versus submissive. And that's where we get the competence piece. So we have assertive people are dominant, organized, industrious, self-confident, ambitious, stable, and deliberative, whereas submissive people are timid, weak, unproductive, disorganized, self-effacing, self-doubting, lazy, or inconsistent. And she kind of organizes these characteristics into 4 quadrants. So you can kind of see where this is going. So if you have hostile weakness quadrant, this is someone who is ineffective and also not fun to work with. And so they don't generally have a lot of power in the workplace. Then you have hostile strength. That's someone who gets things done, but people generally don't perceive them as warm. They don't really love working with them. If we see someone with low status but high power, our initial assumption is often to assume that they're in this category, that they're not really great to be around, but they were really, you know, self-confident and ambitious, and so they got into that position. Then we have friendly weakness in the lower corner here. This is people who are sweet, friendly, but not very competent. And this is where often women are placed. Librarians, others in very women-dominated fields are placed in this category as a default. People assume that they're very nice, they're fun to work with, they're really sweet, but they don't necessarily have a lot of they're not that capable in different contexts. So the goal, even though this is not fair, the goal is to change people's perceptions to this last quadrant, which is friendly strength. I'm enjoyable to work with, and I know what I'm doing. I get stuff done. Before I move on, I want to just check the chat. Yes, yeah. I mean, this is very simplified, and she talks about how this is a continuum, and we can have these characteristics across the spectrum, and ultimately, every interaction that you have with an individual other person shapes where they put you on that quadrant. So you could have some contexts where people perceive you as very, hostile strength, and they don't particularly love working with you, but you get stuff done, or whereas another person might see you as friendly strength. It just depends from interaction to interaction. Yes. Okay, I'm seeing great discussion here about unions and about librarians living in fear of losing status, which I think is so important in discussions about generative AI, where we feel a lot of pressure to be on the cutting edge and to be perceived as competent. So it's really important. What percentage of people involved with designing AI are women? Great question. I don't know. If somebody knows, please feel free to share in the chat. So this is a very short list. I'm going to go into some more maybe accessible activities that you can do to increase how people see you as friendly and competent. But these are just really quick things, and you can see they're often associated with men. So people that speak faster are considered more friendly and competent. People who use powerful speech, so they have less hedging, they're less tentative, they don't apologize as often. They're considered more friendly and capable. People who use a lot of eye contact. There was even a study that showed like if they brought study participants into a room with a round table that clearly had a head, um, the person who chose to sit at the head of the table was perceived as being more friendly and competent than other people. And that did not hold if that person was assigned to sit at the head of the table. They had to choose to sit there. Use of humor, if it's successful, again, can be seen as friendly and competent as long as you're not being very awkward about it. And then offering to help, and we're going to get into this quite a bit, but that can be a way to show that you are both friendly and competent. And if you're thinking like, I'm not going to do these things, like this is not my forte, or for various reasons, I am not good at eye contact. I am not great at speaking fast. I don't want to. Do not fear. These are just some of the things that research has found increases your status, but there are lots of other ones that I feel are more like these are a collection of ones that I think are difficult to just like access and add to your personality. But these other things I think are a little more accessible. I also wanted to bring up the role of bias. That's obviously part of this conversation. When people interact with you initially, they bring assumptions about your status, whether they realize it or not. And this is where things get challenging because people with an assumed high status, they don't have a lot of work to do. They just have to maintain the other person's perception. Whereas if someone has assumed low status, they have to work to change that perception. So they have to do more. And that is part of what is unfair about the situation. And you can imagine folks who are assumed high status or low status. I also wanted to mention something called compensatory impression management because I am very guilty of this a lot. It's our tendency to make ourselves look worse on one dimension, a friendly strength, to make ourselves look better on another dimension. Um, so let's pretend like I was in a meeting and I was being very assertive and I got worried that others might just begin to dislike me. They might think I'm not warm enough. So then in the next meeting, maybe I downplay my assertiveness. I'm very meek. I don't contribute very much. I'm quiet. I kind of physically bring myself inward and down. Well, then now maybe people might assume I'm not competent and I don't have a lot to add to the discussion. So what Dr. Fragel recommends is that we take an add instead of or perspective. So maintain that assertiveness, maintain your willingness to speak up in the meeting, but maybe add something that adds to the sense of warmth that you portray as well. So it's difficult, but trying to do both is going to have the best results. I'm going to just take a break and look at the chat. Just want to make sure I'm not missing anything here. Yes, there's a discussion about whether women are involved in big tech companies, who's running those big tech companies. And that these are things that I don't know much about, so I am curious about all the research you all are sharing. And someone's saying most of our meetings are on Zoom. I wonder how that plays out. I'm guessing you're wondering about like the research that has to do with where people are sitting. And there are certainly other cues that people can portray to show their the competence side that are not just where you sit. So that's kind of interesting. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. You all can keep chatting. So the first strategy is to talk yourself up. And this is something that I find very challenging. I'm sure many of you do as well. So Dr. Fragel gave an example that I thought was really excellent. So I'm sure many of you know about the politician Stacey Abrams. She's also a fiction author, and all around very interesting, very competent person. And so someone asked her in an interview if she would consider running for president. And here's what she said: "Do I hold it as an ambition? Absolutely. And even more importantly, when someone asks me if it's my ambition, I have a responsibility to say yes for every young woman, every person of color, every young person of color who sees me and decides what they're capable of based on what I think I'm capable of. So basically, this is an amazing answer. And it was kind of a tricky situation, right? Because if someone says, "Are you considering running for president?" There's a temptation to not want to seem like, too presumptuous and to say, "Yes, I am ambitious about it." But you also don't want to downplay yourself and say, "No, I'm not," if you are. And so what Stacey Abrams does is it's kind of this strategy, this set of ingredients for a really good response to that kind of question. So you have an opportunity to talk yourself up, you do it, but then you also talk up others who are involved or who helped you or who you want to lift up. So in those cases, you're building your strength, you're talking yourself up, but you're also building your warmth. And it also is just less awkward and it makes for a really great response to those kinds of questions. She says we should avoid these kinds of things. Concealing our achievements, I've done that. It can be very awkward when it comes around later to your colleagues, like, oh, you achieved that and you didn't mention it. Um, Humble bragging is also just awkward. It's much better to just directly brag than to humble brag. Rejecting compliments or gratitude. She describes this as like when someone gives you a compliment or says thank you, it's like a gift. And if you reject it, it feels kind of bad to the other person. So accepting it graciously is much better. Um, Self-deprecation, also not so good. Something that I sometimes find myself doing because of that compensatory impression management, where I'm trying to seem more warm, but in the process, I am downplaying my competence. So I don't know if anyone else has that experience, but it's not a good idea. We shouldn't self-deprecate. And then unnecessary apologies, another one I am very bad at, but it's something that can be a way to share an expression of warmth by saying, "I'm sorry, you're trying to seem more warm," but again, now you are downplaying your competence by kind of emphasizing like I did something wrong. So avoiding doing that is another way to talk yourself up. Okay, before I move to the next one, I'm just gonna quick check that. Okay, apologies are tough as a Canadian, yes. Um, I try to be self-deprecating, but I'm not very good at it. Yep, I resonate with that one for sure. So another strategy is to cultivate other promoters. So if you're still like very hesitant to promote yourself, find other people to promote you. And you can do that by serving that role for them. So that is definitely a relationship I have with one of my best friends here, who works on campus in another department. We promote each other all the time in other spaces. I know if she's in a meeting where I'm not there, she is going to mention my name if it's relevant, and same thing for me. And that is hugely important because if somebody is putting their name behind you, others are really going to see that as a sign of competence. Um, Anything else you can do to just get your name out there, any way you can make sure people are hearing your name a lot is good because the more familiar we are with something, the more positive we feel toward it, even just someone's name. Volunteering strategically. This is something that's not always possible, I think, in libraries, but if you can volunteer for things that will get you in touch with people who are important to know or with projects that have a lot of sway, save your time so that you can volunteer for those opportunities. And then she also talks about what she calls small deposits. These are small actions that have big status impacts. So one would be to write a thank you note. So let's say you attended an on-campus AI workshop and you would really like to be involved with what's going on campus, maybe afterward you write a really nice thank you note to whoever the organizers were. And that could be an opportunity to also mention some of your own expertise that you would be willing to share or bring to the table. Another really easy one is making comments on social media posts. It doesn't take a lot of time or effort, but it can really be nice for another person who is receiving your nice note. And it puts your name out there, again, helping improve your status. One that she really recommends is sharing book or resource recommendations. Um, you can see how that would promote both warmth and status, warmth and competence. So if you know someone is really interested in whatever, generative AI in higher education, and you know of a book or a podcast that has a really great take on that, and you share that with people who would really like to know that, that can be a great way for them to kind of say, oh, yeah, Mandi knows something about this topic, and to remember that and to get your name out there while also helping them with something that matters to them. And then, as I said earlier, promote others with authenticity. So, obviously, you're not going to promote people that you don't actually think are that great at their work. So it's authentic, but it's really helpful to kind of talk behind people's back in a nice way, because it really helps when that gets back to them, they want to promote you as well in spaces where you're not there. So when you can promote others and really mean what you're saying, um, that is a really great way to build your status. And it's very nice. Yes, recommending books. Yep. If you're in a leadership position, you also have responsibility to publicize the achievements of those you work with. Yes, really great. Great point. Not let the good ideas assumed as always being yours. Give credit where credit is due. Yes. And when you do that, it helps you and others. So she talks about that. I don't know if it's on another slide, but if you and your team did something really great, tell other people that you and your team did that, and it helps you show competence because you led that team, but it also helps demonstrate warmth because you're promoting your team's work as well. So it's only a good thing to give credit where credit is due. And then she talks about once you have your status, don't be afraid to spend it. And this is something I think folks who want to be considered warm maybe are a little more afraid to do. I've certainly struggled with that. But she challenges her students to try to collect 10 no's in 1 week. She says people often will try their best to say yes to you, or at least give you some alternative. So when she tells her students collect 10 no's, it is actually very difficult for them to do. So that's something that you could try as well. Like, have you actually asked for what it is you want? Try asking for it, see what happens, see if at least some other good thing happens from that request. And then she talks about coaching others, so mentoring. And you can imagine that increases your perception of warmth because you're helping someone else, and your perception of competence because you're sharing your wisdom and your experience with another person. Um, and she says sometimes people feel a little hesitant to be a mentor because they feel like, oh, I'm not an expert in everything that this other person needs to know. But she says you don't need to be an expert in everything. You just need to offer something of value in even just one category. What can you offer that would help someone else? And then be that person's mentor in that one area. And in the same sense, you can then be a mentor or a mentee with lots of different people, and lots of information sharing can happen. And again, that's getting your name out there, which can only help your status. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second and see if anyone has any questions. Check this chat. Okay, so I have 2 case studies that I'm going to share with you, and I would love to hear your thoughts on how status can play a role in these. So go ahead and use the chat. I'm going to read this first one out loud to you all. Okay, Brittany, the arts librarian at her institution, is very worried about the impacts of generative AI on the work of artists. She sees firsthand how the spread of AI is making it difficult for students to find work when they graduate. Brittany's institution has really embraced AI and is presenting it as the future of every profession, and she disagrees. She knows her campus has a committee on AI, but neither she nor anyone else on the library has been invited to be on it. She wants to make sure that the perspective of professional artists and artists to be are part of the campus AI conversation. How can Brittany accomplish this goal using status? So what do you all think? What can she do to increase her status and get a spot in this conversation? Okay, I'm already seeing just asked to be on the committee, so collect a no. The worst that could happen is they could say no, so just ask to be on the committee. Assuming that that doesn't work, what are other ways that she could get some status working in her favor? Leverage relationships with liaison faculty. Yes, I think that would be great. She's the arts librarian. Don't wait for an invitation. Go to the committee chair, make your case. I think that's great. Also, kind of, there are maybe a few things she could do before she goes to the committee to really establish that she knows what she's talking about, and get her name out there. I love this. Find out who else is on the committee. Are there any allies she could ask about joining? Yes. Form a group with others with the same concern. Create a forum to balance institutional stance. Yeah, I think that's great. And that allows her to, if she's the one, there's another uh, kind of advantage called the first mover advantage, where if she's kind of the one taking charge, now she's the one leading this new group. And that allows her to maybe have a little more status and sway if she goes to that other committee and says, hey, we would like to work with you, or we would like to become a part of your committee. Speak with the arts department to see if they have a representative on the committee and if she can work with them more directly. Yes, so some of this is like getting more information, pulling on different relationships she already has. Work with career services to gather data to support our students' arguments and go through them to access a place. Whoop, oh boy. On the committee as career offices are driving AI exposure. That's a great idea. So really getting at an important connection on campus, career services, since this is really relevant to the concerns that she and the students have. Volunteer to do a presentation or workshop on the topic. Yeah, I think that would be great too. That's a great one because you're now establishing yourself as an expert and you're getting your name out there and it's creating value for the campus. Create lessons, guides, LibGuides to provide balanced information. Yeah, another place where as librarians we can show our expertise. Does she have friends on the committee? That's how I got on a few of mine. Yes, I think that's really important. So kind of along the way, building those relationships. And really at the core of this friendly strength strategy is just generally being reliable and being competent when people call on you. And if you just keep doing that over time, people will begin to want to include you in things. They will trust you if you bring a new idea to the table. All right, I just want to show what I have here. Very similar to you, just ask if she can be on the committee, collect a no. I said maybe if that committee has a training or event, she could write a thank you letter to them saying, thank you so much for providing this opportunity. And then she could talk about her own expertise, like this is something that I've been thinking about, or I've been, maybe she could write some blog posts or create some videos and point to those to show she has some expertise. Get her name out there as an expert in this space. I thought I maybe missed this. I think I missed a slide maybe. Yes, here is a slide that I missed. So this is something that is relevant to this example, but just in general, when you're talking yourself up, one way that you can do that is by updating your automatic reply. So if you're going to be away, like presenting at a conference, maybe attending the Gale conference, perhaps you could have your automatic reply be, I can't respond to your email right now. I'm at this really amazing generative AI in libraries conference. Here's more about it. So now people are getting that information. And it is true, it's accurate, and they're starting to see you as maybe competent in this area. This is the brag and thank strategy that I've briefly mentioned. So let's say you were working on a team and you were applying for a grant and you got the grant. One great thing you could do is maybe other people on your team are not in your department. You could email the chair of that other department and say, oh, I just wanted you to know that your employees under my leadership applied for this grant and we got it. So I really wanted to thank them and thank them for this amazing work. So you're really talking them up, but at the same time, you're presenting yourself as someone who does these cool projects and you're getting your name out there. And then she says prepare warm and assertive responses to questions that you often receive, like, how are you? So instead of just, oh, I'm good, can you have some sort of response that demonstrates your warmth and competence? So, oh, I'm doing really great because my team recently got this really great win and blah blah blah, talking about that. So having that at the ready. Oh, we finished this really amazing project that we've been working on for weeks and we're so happy about it. It went really well. It was well received, whatever. So that is another way you can talk yourself up in a warm and competent way. So going back to our example, sorry for missing that slide. That's something that Brittany could do as well. She could change her away message. She could offer her own workshop. Someone said that, as long as you're not like stepping on toes, that's a real danger. Um, and then she can promote the work of others on campus who care about the impacts of AI on art, cultivate some allies, like some of you said, maybe build your own mini group that's just focused on that, have a discussion that's just focused on that, and then you'll really begin to see who the allies are on campus. Okay, I just want to check the chat really quickly. Um, what can she bring that's expertise that others cannot bring? I think that's a really great idea to think about what is it that I uniquely have to share. Sometimes there's not so much place around the table, so we have to be precise on the strategy. Yes, that is a good point. Like not every committee can have everyone on it. So maybe your strategy is not to get on the committee, but to find a committee member who is, sympathetic to what you're trying to do and make sure that they have the tools and resources they need to represent that point of view. Okay, I have one more case study here. Patty is an instruction librarian at a large community college. She's an avid generative AI user and sees a lot of potential in the new technology. She recently attended a conference presentation from some community college librarians who had developed a series of AI literacy courses for their campus, and she was extremely inspired. Right now, Patty's institution is doing very little to support AI literacy, and the library director is opposed to promoting AI because of his concerns about cognitive offloading, which hopefully you all know that's kind of like when we use AI to do cognitive work that we should be doing to develop and learn. Patty thinks it could really help the library standing on campus if they offered some AI literacy courses for the campus. How can Patty accomplish this goal using status? So see if anybody has any thoughts about this one. Perhaps this has already been mentioned, but a recent Chronicle of Higher Ed article discussed how colleges are and should look to their librarians to lead the AI discussion. I did not see that. If anyone has the link, I think that would be great to share. Share what she learned in the conference so she can share what others are doing. Yeah, so if she attended this conference, oh yeah, she attended a conference where she found out about this idea. So maybe she could do a sort of presentation like, here's what others are doing for her own library. Design a course that includes the director's concerns and how to deal with them. Yes, it's clear, like in this case, it's the director that is really kind of the bottleneck. So how can we gain status with the director? Yes, for sharing with colleagues. So maybe that's part of it. If she can find a lot of colleagues who are interested and demonstrate competence to them, then as a group, they might have a little bit more sway. Organize a share where several people share about AI conferences they've attended. Okay, oh, it disappeared. Across departments and disciplines would be good. Yes, I love that idea. Just in general, that's a great idea. And that's a great way to, if you're organizing it, you're first mover, you're kind of setting the stage for what it will be and making sure the library is part of that. And then she could share this information. Find allies. Yeah, maybe there are allies outside of the library too. I kind of agree with the director. That's why I'm at this conference, to see if it changes my mind. Maybe, maybe not. This presentation probably will not move the needle on that. Provide an outline of what she wants to include to show a balanced approach could take in the director's concerns. Yeah. Highlight that learning about cognitive offloading is part of AI literacy. Yep. Find faculty that want you to address AI literacy. I think that's really important. See how this could align with community's precise needs because we have to support the community's needs. Yes, I think that's a really important point. Like, what is it our patrons want? And if they want AI literacy, then maybe we have some work to do there. Partners with others on campus who want to discuss AI literacy, including others with views like the library directors. Yes, I think it's good to really make sure you fully understand what the complaint is or what the worry is. Um, okay, okay, 5 minute warning. Okay, I need to wrap it up here. Here's what I had. I have find opportunities to promote the director's AI concerns as an example of critical thinking to build respect. So, like I said, really show him like I or her, I forget what, show him that I really do understand your concern and I have expertise in that area. Cultivate some other promoters on campus that could gain traction for the idea and for Patty leading it. And then share valuable resources. So maybe you find some articles about cognitive offloading and you share that with all the library staff and say, oh, I found this really interesting article. And that demonstrates to the director, like, I do know about this important issue. So if I were to design a course, it would definitely include that. I just had a couple of really quick real world examples that I have had experience with. So on my campus, we have an AI symposium in the spring. And so I was able to get a seat at the table by having first mover advantage. So I was one of the first people to do anything with AI on my campus. And it was not rah-rah AI, it was like an AI sandbox where we would just sit around in groups and mess around with AI together. And then I have built up relational capital with the organizer of that committee over years. And because of that, I was able to make sure there was a session about environmental impact of AI at the symposium. So without that, there would have been no session about that. I also was able to make sure that there was a session for the library at the symposium, and we focused on ethics. And it was really great. The environmental impact session was covered by campus marketing. It was one of the few sessions that was covered. And it really put us in good standing on campus to show like we are thinking deeply about this topic. I'm also on the CSU AI Teaching and Learning Lab Advisory Board because my really good friend is the director of that. And I have done a lot of teaching with her. So even though I have a lot of reservations about generative AI, anytime someone asks me to come into the classroom and talk about it, I still go. I don't go in there and just cheerlead about AI. I usually have us do like ethical case studies and have everyone have a big discussion. But I can demonstrate through that I have competence and I know what I'm talking about. And so I got an invitation to this advisory board, and I was able to provide some training for the tutors in that lab about when to use AI and maybe when not to use AI. And then together, that director and myself and our writing center director are now applying for a grant to develop a remedial training for students who are accused of cheating with AI, who the professor doesn't want to just fail. They want to have something more of a learning opportunity. So we're working on developing that together because I had a seat at the table. So I think that's all the time we have. I would love to hear from you. Is there like one thing that you think you will do differently after attending this session that you'd be willing to share in the chat? And also, we have 1 minute for questions. We have a good point here that teaching about AI literacy is not the same as promoting AI. That's important. Be present in the community, engage the AI conversation with other colleagues of other departments and services. Yeah. Yes, likable badass. It's an easy read and it's fun. Collecting no's, good. Beware of the attitude, yeah. Not be as apologetic. I struggle with it every time. Accept more compliments, less self-deprecation. attempting to gain allies instead of doomsaying immediately. Yes, it's hard because there are a lot of problems. We do want to talk about them. I'm gonna just put my email in the chat, and then my resources are here. And I did post my slides in Zoom, so they should be available to you. So I think we're
Excellent.
out of
Well, thank you
time.
so much, Mandy. This was wonderful. Everyone join me in a round of applause for Mandy. This was a really, really great session.